Hi, everyone, and welcome to our bonus call on day 2 of the Money Attraction Challenge. Not gonna pretend. I'm really excited and have been a little bit nervous all day to have these incredible guys join me. You know, I've been talking about it for a week now, posting it all over Facebook, and I can see so many of you are all like, yes, 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 can't wait. We have people, literally, you guys, from all over the world staying up past midnight to watch.
Wow.
So they, I've shared my enthusiasm a little bit for having you here. All right, so we've got 2 of my guests, and we're still waiting for Cody. Hopefully he can join us here really quickly. So while we're waiting, he said he was having a little computer thing going on. So while we're waiting, I just wanted to say, those of you that are watching, I just realized right before we jumped on that we are at about 6,600 of you doing this Money Attraction Challenge. And I just thought, how about we just blow this out of the water and make it 7,000? So tonight, I'm going to invite you to, in the Money Attraction Challenge, the Money Attraction Community Facebook group, you can actually just add a friend. You're welcome to add your friends. And what I'm going to ask you to do is add them right now. Anyone you think of that could benefit from what we've been talking about the last 2 days around deservingness and money. And then I want you to tag them on this video, so they kind of see immediately what you were thinking when you invited them to the challenge. All right, so let's do that. Here's Cody. Cody. Let's see. Cody, there you are. Yay!
As always, technology is fun.
That's all right. You're here, and we're live. We're live. And
awesome.
Everyone's been excited to hear from you guys. I'm going to do a quick intro. Just so you know who we have on. You see Adam Markel, who is, I'll just start with, affectionately, my mentor. I get the joy of being able to work with Adam and have been working with him going on 2 years now. So all the amazing things you see happening in my world, that's who's lighting the fire. That's who's lighting the fire in my life. Adam is an international best-selling author. He's a speaker. He's the CEO of, listen to this, More Love Media. Like, I just love that. And if you guys have ever heard of T. Harbecker, Adam took over his business and ran New Peaks for several years. And in that position, and since then, he's been able to guide over 1 million people to what he calls pivot in their life. And so, get his book. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Oh my goodness.
Shameless plug. So that's Adam. Make sure you get his book, Pivot. And my next favorite guy, and you're all favorites, by the way. So don't. But my next one is Mark Allen, who I have had on during the challenge.
Yes.
And in our private client group a couple of times, because I love Mark's perspective. So Mark is the CEO of New World Media. They've published over 1,000 books, and he's had 2 or more, at least 2 that I know of his authors on the Oprah show. So you might have heard of a little guy called Eckhart Tolle and the Power of Now. That was one. And the other one is, and Mark, help me with this, but I think it's Shakti Gawain. Is that the way you say her name?
Yes.
Okay. Creative visualization. And while Mark has done amazing things for other people, my personal love for Mark is due to this book.
Oh.
It is called The Greatest Secret of All. And not like I've read it or anything.
Oh, that's great.
It's called The Greatest Secret of All. And in these pages was where I got introduced to the idea that you've all heard me talk about, easy and relaxed. Like, this Jamaican girl never thought you could be successful in an easy and relaxed manner. And Mark, I thank you every day. You have no idea how your wisdom has spread through our community. So the thing about Mark, though, that I love is that he acknowledges that he was lazy.
I am lazy.
I'm a multi-millionaire. He is still lazy, proudly lazy, and challenged himself to be lazy and become a millionaire, and he did. So you're going to hear from him tonight. And then Cody, I was hoping you would come on a little early so I could get the last name pronounced correctly. Is it Laughlin?
Laughlin, yep.
I did it. Okay, great. So Cody came into my world by chance a few months ago. And I'm a sucker for stories, right? So Cody introduced me on his podcast, Money Talkers. By the way, friend all of these guys and follow them and find Money Talkers. That's really, really key, especially for those of you that have kids. You want to be following Cody. So Cody interviewed me on his podcast, and then we got to talking about his story. He was a millionaire by 28, lost it all by 29, went to get a job, and then became a multimillionaire again, built a business up to $50 million, sold it publicly, and retired at 38. I think that's pretty cool. What about you guys? So thank you guys for being on tonight. I'm so, so grateful. And what I would love for you to share, each of you just taking turns, is, in our community, there's a lot of women. There's a lot of women that are part of our family. And I manifested you all. I really wanted to have a conversation with guys who have traveled the journey to wealth and success and have something to say about deservingness, and how that might have come up for you. But I would love for you all to start just kind of with a snapshot of your story and the journey from, like Mark has a great story that I know. I've actually never heard Adam's. And I just told you Cody's, but I'll get him to share some more insights. But, Mark, if you could just start with, you're 30 years old, you're a total bum.
Right.
Go from there.
Okay, right. I'll try to keep it short. I woke up when I turned 30 in a total state of shock, realizing I wasn't a kid anymore. This voice in my head said, "You're 30. You're not a kid." And I had no job. I had everything. I tried about 10 different careers in my 20s when I look back. I'd been a theater major. I'd been an actor and a musician and a spiritual seeker. And I had no business experience whatsoever or anything. But I had, no money, nothing. And I spent the day pacing up and down. And by the end of the day, I had remembered this little game I played where you imagine 5 years have passed and everything has gone as well as you could imagine. What would your life look like? And I played that game that day. I wrote ideal scene down on a sheet of paper. And much to my amazement, I wrote, I have a successful publishing company. And I record my music and I write books. I publish books. And I have a big white house on a hill. And then doubts and fears just started overwhelming me. But I look back at ideal. Okay. And so at the bottom, I put, and I do it in my own lazy way. I only work when I feel like it. That's my ideal. My doubts and fears just in and said, impossible. You've got to work 60 hours a week to start a company, which is what my dad had said. And I got around them. I said, well, I'd heard somebody talk about Buckminster Fuller, and he said he looked at his life as an experiment. That one word, I grabbed it. I said, okay, I'm going to try this as an experiment. I said to doubts and fears, give me a year or two to try this experiment of starting my own business, but only working when I feel like it and goofing off and playing music and when I like, and they said, it won't work. But I said to them, look, if it doesn't work, I won't be any worse off than I am now. I had no job. I had no income whatsoever. So even my doubts and fears said, well, yeah, you can't get much worse. And so I started my experiment. I made a list of goals that were in my ideal scene. And I made for each goal, a one-page plan with the goal at the top, start a successful publishing company. My whole plan for that was all I could think of were two things. One, read a used business 101 textbook because I'd never had a thing to do with business whatsoever. I'd been a theater major. And two, talk to people that I know who know more about business than I do. That was my first plan.
That's your plan. That's your business plan.
That was the entire plan. That was as far as I could think. And so I did those. And sure enough, within a year or two, the thing started working. And I realized that our whole thing about hours, about 40 hours a week, is entirely arbitrary. And that so to this day, I don't do Mondays. I don't do mornings. At all. I usually sleep till 11. Today I got up early. I got up at 10:30, and so I laid back down at 2:30 to get a little more rest before this. So I am lazy, but I'm successful. So that's my message to the world: success with ease.
Oh my gosh, success with ease. You want to follow Mark. I know a lot of you in our community have joined his Facebook groups because you love the idea of this, right? Today we talk about, can abundance be easy? And now you know where I get these crazy ideas from. So thank you,
Yep.
Mark, for sharing. Thank you for sharing. And if you can relate, right? You have big dreams. You're even thinking that you have major financial accomplishments that you're striving for, but your doubts and fears are like, are you kidding me? I like Mark's doubts and fears. They're his dad's voice.
Yes. Yes.
So I love that. How about you, Adam? Adam, we worked together for 2 years, and do you realize I've never really heard the story? So I'm in for a treat with everyone else watching.
Well, you read the book, so you know everything.
Well, I've never heard you tell me.
You know what? I love what Mark just said. So he's embracing something. He embraces his laziness, and I think that, you know, we can laugh about that, but so many people lie to themselves, and we all lie to ourselves on some level. So the fact that you're willing to embrace something about yourself and not make it wrong, and not secretly sort of loathe that part of yourself is a very freeing experience. Just to hear you talk about it, actually, I could feel, you know, freedom within myself to just own every part. I was a workaholic. I have a very different story than yours. Although I'll say I became an attorney. I don't know. People ask me all the time, you know, how did you get into that? And I said, I have no idea. It seemed like a good thing to do at the time. I mean, my wife and I met in college, and we knew we wanted to have a bunch of kids. And then I started to calculate, you know, what it would be like to have a lot of kids. And growing up in not poor circumstances, but our middle class then was like poverty today. This is a very different world that we're living in. My dad was a civil servant. My mom worked, and we didn't have a lot of things, but it was just my brother and I, and we lived in an apartment. And so to sort of have a bunch of kids and go for it, have the house and the cars and all that stuff, I kind of figured out that on a teacher salary or working in publishing, which was my first job out of college, making $15,000 a year, I just wasn't going to be able to make it. So I don't know. I looked, hey, I'm pretty argumentative. People tell me that, you know, I'm big with the advice. I thought, yeah, I'll become a lawyer. And that's what I did. I made my mother-in-law proud, you know, that her son-in-law was a lawyer. And we got married, and we started having kids. We actually had 2 kids while I was in law school. And I got out and had to hit the ground running. I was working through law school, and then when I got out, passed the bar exam in New York and in New Jersey, and opened up a practice in Manhattan, and that was it, man. I was off to the races. And what did that mean? Off to the races? 70, 80 hours a week, commuting 3 or 4 hours a day. And people that can relate to this, you know, obviously you guys are putting it in the comments anyway. I literally I was missing our kids as they were growing up. I was missing them for dinner. I sometimes missed them at night before they went to bed. And every morning, sort of 5 years in, the excitement wore off. I was making lots and lots of money, but I realized very quickly that making money certainly wasn't making me happy. In fact, I was feeling miserable. I didn't even know why. I was putting my feet on the floor in the morning. And I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but the first thought I had in the morning was dread. I put my feet on the floor, and I would feel this wave of anxiety wash over me, because I knew something was terribly wrong. Something was really off. I didn't know what it was. I started to see my hair recede, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, I'm losing my hair. I'm stressed out. I'm this workaholic. I'm miserable, and I'm in struggle. I'm making all this money, and I have this wonderful relationship. My wife and I are, as you pointed out, Tasha, we're married 31 years. We have 4 healthy kids. I had everything in the world to be grateful for, to be grateful about. And I did not feel good on the inside. And I didn't even feel as though I deserved anything more than what I was getting. So for that reason, I just decided I'll put my head down. I'll stop complaining. I'll stop whining, and just keep working, work harder, work faster, work more hours, figure it out, you know, when I could. like so many other people, I would commute into the city and see all the kind of the walking dead. People walk past you and there's no life in their eyes. There's no smile. There's just, and I was one of them. I was one of those drones. And it got to the point where I remember coming home late from work one night and I had missed the kids going to bed. I walked in the door. I was dripping wet. I looked at my wife, Randy's face. I knew I'd done it again. And I walked up to her and I said, if I keep doing what I'm doing, you're going to be a widow. And we both took a breath. And she didn't remind me. I mean, this is the thing I wish for everybody, that you have people in your life who build you up and love you unconditionally. And I know that's a tall order because we've got to love ourselves unconditionally. That's tough enough. But I hit the jackpot. I mean, there's just no question about it, because she looked at me and instead of reminding me of the car payments and the house and 2 houses and the kids and the dogs and the gerbils and the goldfish, I mean, a lot of life to take care of. She just knew I knew it, all that. So she didn't add to to the weight of it. She said to me, we'll figure it out. And for that reason, I didn't have to have that classic midlife crisis. We got to plan a midlife calling instead. And 2.5 years later, I had exited my law practice. I became the CEO of a very large personal development training company. I'd already been doing a bunch of speaking over those 2.5 years. I'd written the book Pivot, and was traveling around the world sharing with people the process of reinvention, which is not about jumping ship, but about finding something that becomes your plan B, and what you do tactically, and what are the foundational things that you do to develop clarity and move in the direction of those pivots. And at that point, we were able to move into that new way of being. And I'll just say one other thing, because what Mark said, it inspired me. In the middle of that process, I had what I thought was a heart attack. I ended up in the emergency room one morning, feeling my heart beating so fast out of my chest and sweating profusely. And my wife is white, looking at me and thinking, I'm about to expire. Yeah. And I ended up having what was an anxiety attack. That's what the doctor said. I got lucky. I didn't have a heart attack. And so I know there's a lot of people that feel low level and not so low levels of anxiety out there right now, especially. And I can just tell you that that's not abnormal by any means, but it got my attention, and I started to look at things differently. And that's part of what led me to be where I am right now, and the honor to be here with all of you.
Oh my gosh. All right. Can we just sit back and just have you all keep talking for the rest of the night? Adam, that was such an amazing story. And yes, I actually have heard a lot of it, but there were still some little points that I have never heard before. And if you're watching, my desire is for you to be able to relate, because these are guys and most of us are women, and we just don't realize how similar we all are, right? We look at men and we're like, oh, they have it all figured out. But listen to this, right? So which camp are you in? And we haven't even gotten to Cody yet, but which camp are you in? Like right now, are you struggling with doubts and fears around your deservingness financially? Are you just feeling like, I'm just going through the motions? I'm just like hitting the pavement, working hard because that's what I believe I deserve, and that's the only way, Which of those are you in? Like, which camp are you in? Or maybe both? Let's know in the comments.
I want to raise my hand to that too, Tasha, to just say, I think I was addicted to struggle back then. I mean, it's one of those things that's hard to admit, but I think we tend to, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, why it is that we lean into struggle, and it has a lot to do
with suffering, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cody.
I don't even know if I want to follow these two. I just want to listen to them talk. They're doing great.
Me and you both. Let's just sit back.
Yeah. Well, I want to say something about anxiety things. I think that's an alarm bell, right? Like that's a lucky alarm bell, like a warning shot a lot of times. And so if you're feeling that, then there's something in there that's telling in the back of the head that something's going on that you need to address, and my story is a bit different than theirs, I guess. At 19 years old, I lost my dad. At the same time, I read a book. I was going to college. I wanted to be a marine biologist, and I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I took my first finance class. And I got the book, luckily, from some late night bartending job that the guy was the only guy in the bar, and he gave me the book, and he was a stockbroker, and we had this long talk. The whole thing sent me off on a different path. And so I was at that time, I saw that, I read it, it changed my mind, it changed my life, it changed everything. The way I saw the world. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. And I started telling people this, right? And I was like, I'm 19. I'm not nothing's going on very well for me at the time. But as my story progressed, I got into several businesses, all based on real estate. I was in South Florida. Basically, by the time I was 27, I had 4 companies and 30 employees, and I was a millionaire on paper. I had a condo on the beach, I had rental properties, the Cadillac, the whole thing. But the thing was, as an entrepreneur, that's what we talked about in my house. We didn't talk about personal finance really. It was always kind of like, how are you going to go, run the next business, do the next thing. And I was looking stamps for my family. Like I was always looking for ways to make money as a kid. So it was always kind of ingrained in there. And at 27, I just thought I had it all figured out. And I was on this rocket ship, and then I figured out it was a bottle rocket, and it blew up in the sky. And, and so a year later, I was sitting on the porch of my foreclosed on condo, looking at the beach with my wife going, I don't have the 4 companies anymore. I'm now currently, I didn't know at the time, but I was about 500 grand in debt. And then at the end of it, I ended up at $700,000 in debt. Everything gone, creditors calling, IRS looking not happy for me. I actually had 8 tax returns that I had to file because I used to walk around. I just carried a shoebox, and I just kept all the bank statements in there in the side of my office. So I just managed on whatever was in the bank account. It was like, oh, I need money. What do we got in the bank account type of deal. So what I realized was I could ring the bell, but I really had no idea how to run a company. And I strategically sat on that porch that night, and kind of like Adam, I was fortunate enough that, I was about 1.5 years, 2 years into my marriage, but I married my best friend, and she just looked at me and she said, what are we going to do about this? And she was like, what are you going to do? And she goes, because I was out there just moaning, which is totally not in my normal thing, but it was like, the world was on me in my eyes. It was all stacked against me. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't fair. All this stuff, right? Like all the excuses we give ourselves. And I just remember sitting there going, you know what? I was like, she goes, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go find out how to run a business. And she was like, how are you going to do that? I said, I don't know yet, but I'm going to, and I'm going to fix this. Like, I'm not going to file bankruptcy. I'm going to pay every one of these dollars back. Like, I need to feel this. Right. And it was my mindset. And I was like, I have to feel this. I need to earn my way out of this, because strategically I had done all this stuff very young before I had a family. Like I knew, I was like, I'm just going to do all this stuff and then see if it works. And if it doesn't, it blows up. At least I'm going to learn some big lessons. Right. And I did, and it blew up, and I learned all these lessons, like some of them anyway. And then so I dove in real hard to personal finance. I was able to secure a job as a commercial banker, which I had no business, even interviewing for, which is a whole nother story. But so I got into these businesses, and it was 2008, 2009, and 2010, which was like literally the worst time on the planet to be a banker. Right. And so I got there, I had about 300 businesses in my portfolio, like above $2 million in revenue. And by the end of 1 year, I only had 75 of them left. So I was in all of these businesses that were multiple businesses in the same categories. Right. Like I had doctors who were making a lot of money, and I had doctors that were just living on credit and poor. It didn't matter the business in the industry. And so what I really learned along that was, if you know your numbers, it really doesn't matter what business you're in, right? And so, and that I was fortunate enough at that point to meet some people. I met an owner of a RV dealership that said, hey, we've got this RV dealership. I want to take it to the internet. I did that. We did over $200 million in sales. I ended up selling the company, did pretty well. So along the way, I've had, right now I have 3 companies. So along the way, I've had 13 companies, right? And I think this is one of the things we talked about, Tasha. It was like, 10 of them failed miserably. All right. I mean, just some of them didn't even get opened. Right. It was just an idea that we filed an LLC and logos and like just a, like a crack shot, So, and other was we had built into where I had 100 plus employees. And I've kind of realized that I'm a little bit more like Mark in this sense, that I really like working like, I don't know, like 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so,
That's about right.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so much better. I spend all my time with my kids now, because but I was strategic about it, and just along the way, I've just been, I don't know, just I needed that point in my life that really kind of brought me down to my knees and said, "Hey, man, you know what? Like, you got to figure out a better way to do this." And so I had to build a castle instead of a paper card, instead of a card of how, a house of cards. And so that was kind of along the way. So a lot of the things I learned, and how to deal with people and how to treat people and how to really build from within. And we kind of talked about some of the stuff earlier, but the word that I use is paradigm. And so it's not the way that the world is. The world didn't happen to me. It happened for me. Right. And so the paradigm shift I had to have was, the things that were, if they happened to me and I was upset about them, it was just because I was looking at them and I was being upset. Right. At some point, it's like going to bed after an argument with your spouse, and you wake up in the morning and you don't even remember what you were arguing about. Like, what happened in that time frame, right? Like, just the way you started to look at things. And so I was kind of like, as Adam said, you guys kind of flip that switch, and like, I said, man, I'm gonna make a conscious decision to look at the world in a certain way and try to do that stuff. And that's where I believe that, we really have our own power inside of us.
Wow. All right. I think we can just, leave you guys to chat while I sit back. But it's just incredible to hear each of your stories. And I actually hoped you guys would have joined me earlier, so I could tell you thank you all for this time. So I'll take the chance now. And I know everyone watching, I wish you could see the comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being on. And, if you are watching, you might have joined us a little bit later when I asked all of you. I am certain that you have a few people in your life who could benefit from this conversation, hearing guys talk like this. So would you invite them to the community, just add their name to the group, and then tag them on this video so they know why you invited them to watch this? Let that be your gift. This is really my gift to you and to me. And I'm asking each of you to give this gift to people that that would benefit. Will you do that for me? Thank you. So now I want to ask each of you guys, and I'll start with you, Mark, because one of my favorite stories that you have, and I'm going to ask each of you a specific question around this, but Mark, you made it. 5 years later, you have the dream. You manifested the big white house on the hill. You have all the money in the bank. Everything is great. And you find yourself one day in your house going, yeah, but I'm lazy. For me, like, do I really deserve this? Like, do I really deserve this? So can you talk us through that moment and what your answer was, what you heard from God, what was your insight in that moment?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, starting out, I had all kinds of questions about deserving it because it was such a struggle at first,
Yeah.
For the first 3 years, I lost money, and then finally the right woman came in that showed me what financial controls were about, and basically how easy it is to watch your expenses and to have the goal of. I mean, Cody mentioned it about financial controls. That was the piece. I learned about business as I did it. And so the first 3 years were just losses and everything. Then I hired a wonderful bookkeeper who became my CFO and showed me what financial controls are about. You keep a downward pressure on expenses, and you get to the point where your income surpasses those expenses. That's the goal. It took me 3 years to figure that one out. And so finally we're doing okay. And I do remember, even after I'd achieved my goals, there was this voice saying, you're really lazy. I mean, like maybe it'll fall apart. And even my wife at the time would sometimes say, Mark, if you just get up an hour earlier every day, you wouldn't be behind all the time with things, just an hour earlier. And I said, no, this is my experiment. Sleep as late as I want. No alarm clocks in my life. Just sleep. I was a musician in my 20s. I love musicians' hours. You don't do a thing till 1 in the afternoon. I don't do a thing till 1 in the afternoon. That's about, I get up at 11 and a couple hours for coffee. And, actually I'll get online now. I'll do this and that. But yeah, so even once I had the whole thing, there were still these doubts. And I do remember wandering around outside my house, which I just do sometimes. And the thought was, do I deserve this? Do I deserve this? And maybe I don't, maybe it'll fall apart because of that. That was the thought. And I did this little exercise that I have done for years. I write about it in my last book called The Magical Path.
Great book. The Magical Path.
The Magical Path, yeah. It's such a simple little thing to do. Where whenever you have a question like that or anything, you frame the question and then you just deeply relax and again put out the question from a quiet place and just let go of all thought, relax and see what comes along, see what comes to you rather than trying to figure it out. I just heard this great quote of Einstein, and he said, 99 times I'll try to think of an answer and it won't happen. And then I'll swim in silence, he said. I'll swim in silence and let the answer emerge. That's a beautiful way to put it. Beautiful way. So when you have a question, I thought the best thing to do is not ask for someone else. You just get their opinion of what they would do if they were you, but they're not you. They're them. So the best advice comes from within. And so I did that. I was walking around my house. I said, do I deserve this? Why did it fall apart? And I got real quiet. And this inner voice said, Jesus said, ask and you shall receive. He didn't say, ask and you shall receive if you deserve it. And that turned out to be great advice for me and for everyone. Ask and you shall receive. He didn't say, ask and you shall receive if you've had the right education or the right upbringing or if you're smart enough or if you're rich enough or what. No, there's no qualifications there. He just said, ask and you will receive. It's that simple. That answer has served me very well over the years.
Oh my gosh. Ask and you shall receive, no conditions. That, since the first time I heard you say that, Mark, on an interview like this, it has stuck in my head. It has served me so many times because, deservingness has been one of my, as Adam knows very well, one of the things that I've had to really work on in my life and all in a specific area. And when it comes up, I have to work through, wait a minute, ask and you shall receive. There's nothing else. It's actually a period after that. So you guys,
yes,
ask and you shall receive. But don't just type that. Like, put the period. Make sure your subconscious mind gets that there's a period after that. That is the formula.
Mm-hmm.
I love it, Mark. Thank you. So Adam, you shared that, you were being the drone. And I see you taking notes. So I actually don't even want to ask you the question. I just want to ask you, what are you taking notes? What do you want to say?
I'm a student.
I love it.
And I think that's one of the coolest things we can be in our entire lives. My grandmother, who I miss her almost every day that I think about her. She was 88 when she passed. And what I loved about her was she was a perpetual student right up until the very, very end. And her mind was so good. It was the fact that she smoked 2 packs of Winston for 30 years that killed her. If somehow, and as educated as she was, she was addicted to it. And that was her self-sabotage.
Right.
And one of the things that I wrote down is that when people aren't happy, they typically sabotage their success. And a lot of people have made plenty of money and haven't been able to keep it, have had successful businesses and seen them scuttled. And usually it's the result of that that inner discontent that we've got, or that unhappiness. And so there's two things that I've got. One is that I want to share a morning ritual, because these days we do a lot of keynote speaking. We spend a lot of time with organizations, helping them to develop greater resilience, both individually and as a company. And to me, again, when I think about how it is that you get rid of self-sabotage, you work on creating resilience. I don't know what happiness is, but I know what it feels like to feel as though you could withstand anything. That it doesn't matter how hard the wind blows, you'll always be able to be that willow tree that doesn't fall over. That no matter how many times you fall over, you'll always be able to get back up. And not only will you get back up, as what Cody was saying, but you'll learn something in the process that helps you to be that much more successful down the road. I think people are so sort of stuck in their story about the failures and the mishaps they've had, that they can't actually use those things as the fuel to pivot, if you don't mind my saying that word, and then move forward to get into momentum again, which obviously Cody was able to tolerate his own failure. I've tolerated my failure, and it's not been easy. Mark, I'm sure it was the same for you. And with the help of people around you that love you, no matter what, you can tolerate those things. But we've also got to be our own best friend. So the way I ensure that I'm my own best friend is that I start the day with my code of conduct. And if we get to it later, I'll share the waking ritual that I think is really important as well. But this is something I think will make a difference for folks. And that is that about 12 years ago, I had read Think and Grow Rich, just like Cody, and I already had memorized it in my head. I ask not, O divine providence, for more riches, but more wisdom with which to accept and use wisely the riches I received at birth in the form of power to control and direct my mind to whatever ends I desire. So I started to think about, how do I want to direct my mind? And I started to think about, well, I want to feel a certain way. I want to feel wealthy. People want to be wealthy, but to be wealthy, you've got to feel wealthy first. You want to be happy, you got to intend happiness. You've got to intend certain things ahead of time. So I wrote down 13 statements that all start the same way. They start with, I experience. That's it. I experience, and then there's sort of the ellipses, the 3 dots, and I fill in the blank. So my first 13, I can recite sort of the first few of them, because I've always start with these. I experience gratitude today. So I wake up, and before I play with my phone, I look at Facebook. Forgive me, Facebook. Before I check email, before I do anything, even drink coffee, I sit down and I quietly look at this document that I created about 12 years ago that starts with these statements. I experience gratitude today. And then I just sit in silence with what gratitude feels like. I'm not a great meditator, but I'm pretty good in stillness. And in that still moment, I can think about being grateful for my life, for my kids, for Randy, for people like you, Tasha, doing the work you're doing in the world, for all the people I get to meet each day, like Cody and Mark now. And I just sit in gratitude for a few moments, and then I move on. And the next thing is, I experience having a positive and harmonious attitude today. I experience miracles today. I experience feeling and being healthy, wealthy, and wise today. As Mark said, I experience ease, feeling at ease in my body, ease in my finances today. Anything you want to feel, you can put into these statements. And I started with 13, and then for 12 years, I start the day by checking in with them. I sometimes say them out loud, sometimes I just think them. And then at the end of the day, I look back at that code, what we call the code of conduct. I look at it and I check in to see whether that's the kind of day. You think about it, try to create the day of your dreams, a day where you didn't have worries, you didn't have anxiety. I mean, what does it mean to be rich anyway? I mean, I'm in a beautiful place. Everybody here, I think, is doing really well and all that, and that's fine. But the things that make you feel wealthy really have to do with how you feel. And so if you want to be wealthy, you've got to first feel it. What does it feel like to not be anxious? What does it feel like to not worry about money, right? Not to be envious of other people that have more than you've got, things like that. So you start with the code, you create those list of experiences I experience, and then whatever it is that comes next, and you check in at the end of the day to see if that's what you experienced during the day. And you don't have to trust me on this one. You know, it'd be great if you shared with Tasha whether this worked for you, but it's going to be for you to test out on your own and see whether or not, in fact, you are not a master manifester, just like Tasha, that you don't manifest exactly the kind of experience of being that you intended at the beginning of the day, because you are the conscious creator of your own life experience, or your life experience is created by default, meaning that you don't have any particular intentions and the world just delivers you, you know, the thing du jour, whatever that might be, whether it's aggravation or worry or bills or whatever that looks like. This has really worked for me, and it took me out of a mindset where I grew up without money. At a certain point, I had a lot of money. I didn't feel comfortable with having a lot of money. I didn't think it was actually even good to have a lot of money because of things my dad said. And I felt as though maybe I was a fraud. So I had to get rid of a couple of $1,000,000 at a point. It's not easy to do. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's really easy to get rid of money, especially lots of money. Not so easy to get it back. So worked a big chunk of my life to get it, give it some of it away, get it back again. And now what I realize is that the way you keep it is by working on how it is that you are embodying that deservingness. And the best way I know how to do that is at the very beginning of the day.
Oh, I love that. Well, Adam, again, I wish you could see all the comments. Everyone's eating it all up there. I experience everywhere. And, you know, one of the things I really wanted to ask you to speak to was that time when you were being like on autopilot, going into the city, working, and that sense of, I don't think I deserve more than this, because as you're saying, we have to feel the essence of wealth and happiness and joy first. Well, sometimes we're blocked when we don't even feel like we deserve to be happy, or we don't feel like we deserve to be wealthy. You know, like you said, your dad had created thoughts that said money is not a great thing to have, you know, so how can you feel like you deserve it? So can you share that a little bit about that period?
That period where I didn't feel like I deserved it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a time in my life where I would just think I'll just earn more. And if I just earn more, if I just buy another house or another thing, right? Cody probably can relate to this as well, that somehow or another, I will get to the point where I actually feel deserving of those things, that I feel worthy of it. That never happened. I never looked in the mirror after I'd earned $50K in a week. Then I earned $100K in a week. Then I made $250K in a week. And I never once, having done that, looked in the mirror and said, you're there. You're a good guy. I respect you. I love you now. Never happened.
Right. So you got to start at the beginning, right? We got to go back before all that and be like, I deserve it. I deserve
Go back to basics.
All. Yeah, back to basics.
Foundation.
I love it. All right, Cody. We had a conversation and you said something. I wrote it down in my notebook, big and bold. And I promised myself that day that I had to have you share your feelings on this. You said, and hopefully you remember this, but you said, if you don't believe you deserve it, I don't really think you should be. Do you remember what you said? I can remind you, but I just feel like it'd be better coming from you.
Wait. You said if I said if you don't think you deserve it, then what?
A person does not believe that they deserve wealth and success, then they shouldn't what?
Oh, you're gonna put me in the spot.
Well, you shouldn't have it. That's what you said.
I was gonna say in my head I'm thinking have it, but I'm like, oh no. Like,
that's what you said. That's what you said.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about something, and Adam kind of touched on this a little bit, right? There's something that has started earlier in your life, right? And it's called your money story. Yeah. So one of the reasons that I named my company Money Talkers is because it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, because most adults' parents didn't talk to them about money. Right? There's two talks that are just anxiety-driven talks for parents, right? Birds and the bees and money. Those two things will just, I mean, they are, you know, it's a touchy subject, that's right. So in that money story, you can look back and think in your head, okay, how did my parents see money, right? Now, how did they teach me about it? what were the things that I saw them, the way that they reacted about it, right? Maybe they just said, maybe they said, work hard, get a job, right? But then all day long they complained about their job, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, there's all these things that you can put out for that. And one of the things is kind of awesome is that you can now determine what you want your money story to be about in your life. So the way that you think about things is your control. So what I said to you about if you feel like you don't deserve it and you don't deserve wealth and you probably won't have it, right? Because you have to think about these things. You have to think like, look, I deserve this. And the reason I think for me that a lot of people have a false belief around deserving things is because it feels like you're taking something from somebody else, right? Yeah. If I get it, you don't get it, right? But if I do well, you can do well just the same time, right? It's not, there's never me pulling away from you, but I'm going to create this wealth. I'm going to create a problem. I'm going to create a solution to a problem. The bigger the solution, the bigger the problem, the bigger the reward usually comes back in. So if I am able to do that, and I am able to find problems and solve them in a faster way, in a more efficient way, if I'm able to show a business owner how I can increase the value of their business by $100,000 in 6 months, and is it not worth to pay me $10,000?
Yes, sir.
Whether it takes me 5 minutes, 1 hour, or I got to work every day in his shop, doesn't matter, right? The time frame of what you solve doesn't matter compared to what your solution and what the result is on the other side of it, right? And so if I am looking at this and I say, I don't like my money story, then rewrite your money story. Determine what your money story is going to be, and then sit down and consciously do it, okay? At 29 years old, when I was sitting there with $700,000 in debt, I said, I'm going to be retired by the time I'm 39. So if you're not sitting there with $700,000 in debt and you say, I want to be there in 10 years, you can do it as well. Now you have to then back out of what you're going to do. Okay. And so you then say, I love the fact that Mark said earlier that for each one of his goals, he wrote a 1-page plan to do it. The plan doesn't have to be mind blowing. It can be read business book 101, find people who know what they're doing and go do what they're doing. Right. Like that is a plan, but people don't realize that. And so when they look at this thing and they go, well, and you know, where am I going to be in 5 years? Right? Where am I going to be in 10 years? Where am I going to be? Where do I want to be? Okay. Where do I want to be in 10 years? Well, in 9 years, where would I have to be to get there? Then 8 years, 7 years, 5 years, whatever. If you pull back and you say, hey, listen, I want, and I don't know why we pick this arbitrary number, but some people say, well, I want $1 million in 10 years. Okay. You need $100,000 a year. Okay. How much does that take? It's $8,500 a month you got to put away. Okay. That seems like a lot. Can you find $2,250 a month or week? So how do I find a client that pays me $2,250 that I don't have to touch that money on top of what I do today for 40 hours or for 30 hours or for 20 hours or 5 hours in Mark's case, I think it is, right? But as little as possible, right? And I was laughing because I can see the comments and somebody asked in there, how do you, I wish I saw the exact phrase, but it says, how do you make more money in less time, right? And I will tell you this, if you are going to work for 50, 60 hours a week or 40 hours a week, let's just call it that, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, I guarantee you there was about an hour and a half to 2 hours that you are really punching the clock. Like you were hammering that thing, right? And there's one big thing that you could do every single day that would move your job forward just exponentially. And what you need to do is identify that one thing, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and do that thing every single day. If you figure out what's going to move the needle, and guess what? It's not replying to 50 emails. It's not, it's generally not an Instagram post, right? It's like, okay, I need to have a tough conversation with this vendor, or I need to have a conversation with this employee, or you know what? I need to sit down and set goals for the week for my employees that they can hit. And I'm going to back out daily what they got to get to the end of the week and make them bite-sized and go into those things. But if you were to take the time to do those things, I mean, really look and say, okay, what is the big domino that's going to knock all the other ones down today? And you do those daily, because generally they're the last thing you want to do. At the end of the day, you're like, oh yeah, I want to get to that. But good news is I made 15 phone calls and had, an hour lunch with a possible client, right? Like, no, man, like, how am I going to get 50 clients? How do I get that $2,250 a week? Right? I want $1 million in 10 years, or whatever that goal is going to be. You set it back and you intentionally come back to that thing, and you can write it out. And again, if you don't like your money story, okay, First of all, you have to be aware of what it is.
Yeah.
So identify it and identify what the inputs were. Doesn't make them bad, right? Who knows? I mean, Adam's dad telling him, look, man, money's bad may have driven you to where you are, right? You don't know, but it's part of the story. Right. So it's like kind of trying to look at like Harry Potter and then taking out all the bad guys in the book. It'd be awful, right? So you have these so you have this, like, you have these things that were inputs into your life, which is where I've never had a problem talking about my failures, because the second I started talking about them, people related to me again. Like they were like, I was able to help them because they were like, oh, like, what's going on with you? And I'm like, man, I just filed all my tax returns and I owe $98,000 to the IRS. And they're like, oh, I owe $2,000. Like, how do I get that out of there? And I'm like, sure. And they were like, thanks for sharing that. I feel so much better about myself, And I'm like, no problem, man. But what I found is that there was a camaraderie, right? And so when we talk about our failures and we push into those, not only should we do that internally and celebrate them because we should have learned something from them, there's actually a really good lesson in there to be able to share them with other people, because they will have either had the same failures or have wondered what happens if they tried and failed, or they will have a different perspective that maybe you didn't see that gives you a better way to look at how you failed.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Thank you, guys. All right. So we have literally 9 minutes left to go. And I really want to ask each of you a question and have you just share bite-sized thoughts on this. We've been talking this entire week about deservingness and wealth. And one of the things that I realize is every day I get on and everyone's like, I deserve to be rich. I believe I deserve to be rich. And genuinely, they are convinced that they believe that. And I get it. So I want to ask you guys, from your wisdom and all that you've gone through in life and in business, how would you say someone can tell what they really believe they deserve? So I'm going to give you a minute to think about that, each of you. I'm going to tell a story that showed me. I teach about this. I study it. I've been devoted to this work for 7.5, 8 years. And a few years ago, I found myself at an event that my entire team and I, Adam's my mentor, so he knows the work that goes into this. We put on this event. We have 200 people plus in the room. We've worked tirelessly. The weekend goes amazing. I've poured my heart and soul, all my energy, and it comes down to time for you to be invited to continue the journey in our program. I invite the entire room. I say, go to the back of the room, sign up. And I see people moving and it's like, yes, they took the invitation. I'm going to change some lives. That's amazing. Remember what I talk about, right? Money and mindset. Here comes this woman across the room, like beeline for me. I'm trying to get out of the room, to tell you the truth. I'm exhausted. I've done my job. And this woman is coming. I can't look away from her because she is dead centered on me. Eye contact, literally. Everyone is moving. Just move. It helps that she was like 6'2", a model, and everyone's moving out of her way because they can tell she's on a mission. She walks over to me. She looks me dead in the eye. She goes, I want to work with you. What does that look like? I want to work with you one-on-one. What does that look like? And I go, deer in the headlights. It would be $25,000 to work with me for 6 months. She goes, perfect. Where do I start? And I go, just like that. I can still, right? I go, you know what? Go over there to the back of the room. I have a smaller program you probably will need to start with anyway. So go sign up for that. I literally in that moment said no to easy. She was taking out the checkbook to write me a $25,000 check to work with me one-on-one. And when I calmed down and I sat in the back of the room by myself and I was like, what just happened there, Tasha? This is what I want you to get when you are saying you believe you deserve for money to be easy, and how you might not really be believing it. Just look at your life. So for me in that moment, what happened was this childhood thing that I can't make money that easy. It can't be that easy. And so in the moment when she literally was like, here, I went, no. You can't just give me $25,000 in this moment. Like, no, go do something else. And that's what I want you guys to really start being open to consider, is how this deservingness thing is at play, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. So guys, I'm going to ask you real quick, Mark, how would someone know what they really believe they deserve financially?
Years ago, I did a bunch of seminars with Shakti Gawain, who wrote Creative Visualization. And she had this exercise that would blow people's minds, where she had them take a big sheet of paper and have 3 columns. In the first column, you list what I have now. And you list all your things, your material things, your job, your career, whatever, your family, whatever, just what. And then in the middle, the column was what I want, what I really, really want. And you write in then your ideal scene. And then the third column is what I really want, and you put what you have now. Because what you really want is what you have now. So it is a matter of, yes, of really looking at what you have and really impressing on your subconscious, I want to take this up a notch. One of the most powerful prayers I ever was, I just said, I want to take a quantum leap in my financial situation and in my inner peace. That was my literal prayer. I started praying. And about a week or 2 after I started praying that, The Power of Now fell into my hands to publish. It's the best book I ever read for inner peace. But it made me several $1 million, seeing we sold 7 million copies in the US alone and in 50 different foreign rights editions. And so it was the actual prayer. But I do think, really take it up a notch in what you pray for and what you visualize.
Yeah, I love it. So, Mark's answer to the question is in that column exercise, when you put what you have right now, and then the last column is what I really, really want. And then you put it back there, you realize what you have right now is what you're believing you deserve. And the leap from that is his prayer. I want to take a quantum leap in my finances and my inner peace. That's amazing. Mark, that blew my mind. Love that.
Great.
Thanks for sharing. Right? All right, Adam, what are your thoughts? How would we know what we really believe we deserve?
Well, this is going to hit sort of between the eyes a little bit, and it plays on what Mark just said. Everything that we have in our lives, we've settled for. And
pause. Okay, you can't just drop that and then continue talking. Like, I got uncomfortable with that one. Let me reposition. Say that again, please, Adam.
Everything that we have, everything that any of us have, anything I've settled for. Mm-hmm. So this is exactly what we have to take stock in, be honest with ourselves about. Not everybody wants to get rich. They might say they want to get rich, but they don't really want to.
Yep.
And a lot of, as what Cody said, there's a lot of story wrapped up in what it means to be rich. So some people might say they want to be rich, but internally what they realize is I'll have to kill myself to get rich. I'll have to work and never see my kids. No one will like me because I'll have to become some sort of a jerk, and then I won't have any friends. And they've got all these stories wrapped up in what it would mean to be rich. So, and often I think one of the telltale signs of how you really feel about wealth is to just check in with yourself when you see somebody who's really, really doing well, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody that's getting out, of a Bugatti, or somebody that just bought or sold a $60 million home or bought a $100 million painting. And you got to check in and see, how do I actually feel about that? And I check it myself on this because I still have some of that old programming that plays. And I remember having dinner with Robert Kiyosaki in Singapore when we were doing some programs together some years ago. And we're having dinner in a place, and he says, because the bill comes, and he reaches to grab the check, and he starts to look at it to check and make sure that we didn't get overcharged. And I'm looking at this, the rich dad guy, right? He goes, don't look at me. He goes, I got a rich dad. I got a rich person inside of me. I got a poor person inside of me. There's something like the battle between the poor person and the rich person, because I was raised with poor person's mindset. So there's that battle that goes on. I prefer the Hawaiian, the Huna philosophy. And I love this philosophy. And I'll say this one twice because I love the way you made me importantize that, Tasha, made up word, right? And that is that we bless that which we want. That's the philosophy. That's the advice. Bless that which you want. So instead of looking at somebody and resenting them for having more, or being envious or a little jealous, or, sort of look down your nose at why somebody would spend so much money on something or whatever it might be, that instead you bless the things that you want. You bless someone, you bless their family, you bless their house, their car. You see somebody that has something that you would love to have, whether it's material or it's their peace, or it's their relationships, or whatever it is. You bless them. Bless that which you want, because anything that you negate, you cannot have. So I will just, this may be the last question. So I'll say, what folks that are really wanting to acquire greater wealth, of course, watch yourself, watch how you act, watch your attitude about money, of course, and then do some really smart, simple things. Like what Mark was saying, the only thing in business, I've owned numerous businesses, the only thing you ever control in business is what you spend. That is the only thing you ever control in business. And make use of the law of averages. It's an old Ogmandino book where I first got introduced to this concept. It's called The Greatest Salesman in the World. And that's a book, Mark, you would have loved to have represented him on that one, right? Sold millions and millions of copies.
Yes.
So the law of averages, meaning we're always selling something. We're selling ourselves, we're selling our vision, we're selling our products and services. And we've got to make use of the law of averages, because if you're willing to hear the word no enough times, if you're willing not to see no as an indictment on your self-esteem, if you're not going to hear no and think, yeah, I get it. I don't really deserve it. I'm not really worthy. So that, of course, that person's saying no. If you're willing to just hear no enough, the law of averages will work in your favor. It will always be the case. If you show up to that conversation with love, you're going to hear enough yeses to the point where, as Mark says, your yeses start to create that cash flow and that P&L where your income exceeds your expenses, and then you're in business.
I love it. We're literally over time, but I cannot let you go without telling them about your morning. If you could just tell us what you say every morning.
Oh, it's written on my shirt. So
There we go.
4 simple words. That's it. I did a TED Talk about this one thing, how you start the day and what you say. So all of you, your task for tomorrow is when you wake up, you get to wake up. You're grateful for waking up, and then say something out loud that makes sense to you. When I started saying I love my life, I was a miserable, unhappy person. I mean, in my practice, the thing I was doing, which was law at the time, it had nothing to do with the law, but I was miserable doing it. I'd feel that anxiety. Now I put my feet on the floor, and these are the words that come out of my mouth. What are the words that are going to come out of your mouth first thing tomorrow morning?
I love my life. I love my life. Can you guys type that? I love my life. They've all heard you before on here, Adam. They're all right. I love my life. And you start loving your life. You start believing you deserve, right? You are deserving of the best.
When you love your life will love you back. And that's when the money flows. That's when all these things start to connect and click. And just because it's all the universe.
Yes.
I love it. They're like, they're like, I love that homework. Excellent homework. All right, Cody, we'll wrap up with you. Thank you all for staying on. I know we've gone over time, but I know this has been of immense value. I can see the comments. I'm so grateful. And I feel really blessed in this moment. Thank you guys for being on. This is like, it's like Christmas morning for me. That's how I feel right now. And it's my birthday week. So it's kind of like you're all my birthday present. Thank you. So Cody, what would you say? How would you see someone walking around and you can just tell they don't believe that they deserve wealth and success and happiness, all of it, how can they tell what they really believe they deserve?
Well, first thing I want to say is I want to say thanks to all these people I see on the side over here, and thanks to you guys for having me on, because this has been awesome. I have taken a bunch of notes just listening to you guys talk. It's been awesome. So the second thing, to answer that question, I think that having determined what your intentions are for seeking what you're seeking, finding your why is 1000% what makes it easy to do the hard things that you need to do. Like I talked earlier about finding that big domino in your business. Like the reason you avoid that thing is because it's like it's the biggest, scariest, or it's the biggest talk you have to have, or you don't want to mess it up, or whatever it is. Okay, but like if your intentions are to have a lot of success, or to make it, or have a lot of money, or whatever it is, like that's just a vehicle of what your intentions are behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I could not wait to get to where I wanted to be in my kid's life anytime I wanted to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be able to be in my wife's life anytime that I could be, right? And that became from my money story, right? I lost my parents, right? I lost them when I was young, and I realized I never got to have that a big adult conversation with my dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got an amazing dad through high school, but he died when I was 19, so I never got to have that next thing, right? And so I wanted to have those times with my kids where that I could build those times. And so anytime that I was looking at this and I was working 60, 70 hours a week, and I needed to read the next book because I was just getting irritated with, I wasn't running the business again well enough, right? And I knew that other people were doing it, so I just had to figure out how they were doing it. So when I didn't want to read the next book, or I didn't want to have the conversation with that employee or the vendor or the person or those things, like I always came back to that. And I would always kind of I still have them up here. I have little stick-it notes from them, or I have one that has here that just says, "Keep going, Dad. Love, Riley," with my daughter, right? And I just keep it there because whenever I get sidetracked, or I get like, I don't want to do it, because I don't care how many times you've done it, you still have these parts in your business where you're like, like you're like, I got to talk to so-and-so and I don't want to do this, right? And you just like look at those things and you have those little reminders, and you find your intention, you find your why, and you make that why bigger than the struggle or bigger than the domino. And as long as you keep that in perspective and you have that mindset shift of saying, okay, this is not going to bother me in 5 years. I don't need to worry about it for 5 minutes. I'm going to run through this thing and I'm going to go crush it and see what happens, right? Even if you think it's going to go bad, run through it and make it go bad and figure out how to fix it, right? Because if it's going to go bad in 10 days or 10 months from now, go bad today and you'll figure out how to do it better, right?
Yeah.
So, for me, when I hear people say I don't deserve these things, is because I don't, like Adam said, I want to be rich. Like that's super easy to say, man. But like, why? Right? And then really dig in there and really think about that thing and say, okay, now am I willing to do the things that the people who got there before me are willing? Am I willing to do those things? Because there is not a thing on this planet that you can't do if somebody else did it. You just have to determine, you may have more struggle, it may take you more time, or you may be able to do it even faster or better than them because you have better God-given talents, right? But if you have that why and that driver, the money side of it comes along with it. I don't think you heard any of us sit down and say, it was got to get the money, right? It wasn't. It maybe in the beginning, but and then once you start to realize that really isn't the lever.
Yeah, it's really coming back to, I deserve the best life. I deserve the best life, and what is the best life, and why? Why do I really want it? Why do I want it?
Absolutely. Because we only get one run, right?
That's it.
Why have a bad run? Go have a good run. Go have fun with the thing, right?
Go have fun. Well, Cody, you got to write a book, because everyone on here is asking for the book. So I'm going to go. This is Adam. Pivot. Adam Markel. Pivot. Go out and get it. And Mark has a few. This is the one that really changed my life. The Greatest Secret of All by Mark Allen with a C. And he also has another great one called The Magical Path. He has a whole bunch. I have another one up there. I've got tons of them. I love Mark's work.
Mark, I think you're going to have to sell a version with Tasha's notes in there. Do you see that thing?
Yeah.
Like a clip, like a sidebar version.
Yes.
And then you guys, money talkers, if you have kids, like Cody's passion, one of the things he shared with me was, he got really mad and angry in college when he heard his professors talking about money and how to leverage money and make more money. And he was like, why isn't anyone talking to kids about this? Mm-hmm. Right? Why are we doing trigonometry? See, Cody, I remember. So if you want to even just be inspired about how to talk to your kids about money and start this conversation now, or get them to listen to Cody. Money Talkers is his podcast. Go follow him. Guys, mwah! Thank you for being on. Love you guys. Have a great night. A great night, everyone. Thanks for watching. Mwah!
Love you too, Tasha.
There you go, Tasha. Thank you.